If that happened to me, I don't think I will have that possibility, you said. But when you're losing what is the most important for you, how do you turn this moment into something meaningful?
Do you think people are happy?
Huh.
Anouchka, very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you. I have to admit, it's the first time I have a doctor in philosophy on the podcast. I was really looking forward to this conversation because I think it would help demystify archaic ideas that people have of philosophy, perhaps myself included as well. But before we delve into the technical subject, I wanted to understand what drove you into this field. Why did you choose philosophy as a field, as a passion?
Well, I need to go back a little bit back in time. I grew up in Mauritius and I studied in the French system. And in the French system, philosophy is mandatory in the last year of high school, which we call terminale. So I discovered philosophy when I was 17, and it was really a slap in the face. I mean, at that time, everything I believed in was questioned by the philosophical approach. I guess that without philosophy, everything seemed obvious for me. My habits, my beliefs, the way I was living. And then I understood that everyone is a kind of a construction of history, of your family, of the surrounding. And I really felt in love with the way of questioning everything to try to better understand the world, human being, and myself. So everything started at that time. At the age of 17, I didn't know what I wanted to do as an adult, as a profession, but I guess that I knew that philosophy would always be part of my path, personal path and also professional path. So that's how everything started.
And then you went on to study that at university as well, which eventually led to a doctorate.
Exactly. I went to Paris, to La Sorbonne, to study literature and philosophy. And yeah, I did a long education because I pursued until the PhD. I guess in my ideal world, I would have been an eternal student. I love to study, so working was not really my priority at that time.
Yeah.
And I pursued until the PhD, yeah, exactly.
When you were studying, was there any particular sort of school of thought or philosophy type, if I may use that word, that attracted you the most?
Well, it's very difficult to choose or to pick one because all these philosophers are connected in a way. But I did my PhD on the question of identity. And I guess when you do a PhD, it's always related in some way to your personal history. And growing up in Mauritius, I guess that this particular question of identity was really triggering me. And it was at some point, I guess, when I was a teenager here in Mauritius, a kind also of, I don't know if I can say suffering because it's a strong word, but maybe yes, because, well, you know, Joanne, also maybe better than me, the Mauritian society, and while we tend to put everyone in a box with some labels, well, that's true for, I guess, every society, but that was really strong in Mauritius. And I guess that's why when I was 17, I was really eager to leave Mauritius and to go somewhere else, very far away from the island, and to have this sense of freedom maybe. And also that's why I was really intrigued by this particular concept of identity. And I worked on the thinking of a French philosopher. His name is Édouard Glissant. He's not that famous. He's from the 20th century. He's originally from Martinique, Caribbean islands, and he has a very interesting thought. He tries to analyze the different variations of identity in the context of globalization, and I really fell in love with his thinking.
I read you contributed to a newspaper article recently, and I saw that they asked you a question about the relationship, if any, between philosophy and spirituality / religion. I'm not going to ask you that question, but something that might be slightly related to it. Do you think with philosophy, or if you spend too much time in the philosophical arena, do you think we could be brought to think too much? Does that make any sense?
Before I moved back to Mauritius, I was teaching philosophy in Dubai at the French high school. So my student was 17 to 18 years old. So that was a question I got a lot.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I want to be the advocate of exactly the opposite. We're in a society, I guess, where we think very little. So maybe I need to differentiate what I call the technical thinking and the philosophical thinking. The technical thinking is here everywhere. We ask ourselves what's in the fridge, how to get more money, how to be more successful, how to be a better parent, etc., etc. So this is what I call technical thinking. There is a problem, I want a solution, and this is the how. How am I going to do that? The philosophical thinking is a lot about the why, about the purpose, and about the meaning. And I guess that the philosophical thinking is very rare in our society, and it's related to time. We are all very busy, to time and to tiredness. If you don't have time, and if you are really tired, you don't have the criterion to approach, to embrace the philosophical thinking. So I think that's why the philosophical thinking is really not as present as it should be in our society. So anyway, I will try to answer your question. Yes, I think that there is a way where we can say that it's too much thinking. You know, there is this kind of stereotypes on philosophers, like I will be here and say, oh my God, why the couch? Why the wall and everything?
You're questioning everything.
Yeah, exactly. I really think that some subjects maybe don't need questioning. And I guess that the limit is when the questioning part would be an obstacle to live fully. That will be the limit. That will be, I guess, according to me, the part when the philosophical thinking will be maybe too violent and will be a little bit useless in a sense.
Yeah. Or the downside will start to outweigh the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, philosophy is all about living and living a rich, joyful life. So if the philosophical thinking is not allowing you to live this fulfilled life, so it's not the right way to do it.
It's interesting what you mentioned about, asking about purpose and constantly questioning ourselves. And this brings us to the business world now, where we are seeing more with a few thought leaders. I mean, it started a while ago, but it's more present now, where people are starting to ask more about the why of the company rather than other than just the profit and the bottom line. So, and I think that's one of your fields of prédilection, as I may call it, where you go out to companies and you talk to them about philosophy. So can you tell us a little bit about what role does philosophy have to play in the modern business?
I guess it has a role in every part of our life, but particularly in the corporate world, I think it's really essential. To put it in another way, if you take a company, it's a place where you have people who haven't chosen to live together, to work together, but they are here and they need to be efficient, they need to collaborate in harmony with their difference of personality, of perception, etc. So it's really a big challenge to make it happen. Well, sometimes we think, oh, that's it. People are looking for a job and you have a job, so do your job and that's it. But it's a real challenge, actually. And I think now you're right that companies are really aware of that. I guess that a few decades ago, if you had a job and a good salary, you were forced to be happy in a certain way. And now things have changed. So well, my aim is to bring this thinking in the business world. What I usually said is that with the philosophical thinking, we'll take a step aside and we'll just press the pause button and just forget for a while the part with the efficiency and try to think about the why and try also to think deeper. And usually when I finish my talk, a lot of people come to me and said, wow, that was really interesting because these are questioning I had, but I never had really time to deep into this thinking, and I really think and I really feel that it's really important. So that's really my goal, to bring all these different approach and maybe a different rhythm in companies. And I have to say, because I started 2 years ago in Dubai, and I also worked with some companies in France, and now since 4 months in Mauritius, companies are really enthusiastic and curious in a good way about the philosophical thinking. That was a challenge for me 2 years ago.
Because it was quite new or inexistent.
Exactly.
Perhaps?
Well,
Yeah.
I created the job actually, and I just thought, well, I'm in love with philosophy. I want everyone to do philosophy. So let's try to bring it to the corporate world, and we'll see, because I'm sure they will need it. That was a little bit the beginning of the thinking. And they are really responding in a very positive way. So I guess, also everything's about timing. And it's a little bit a cliche now to talk about that time again, but obviously, COVID has played a part in all this shift we can observe in the corporate world.
Yeah, and also, shift in paradigm, shift in mindset, get people to question themselves now when they perhaps weren't before. As you said, they were just kind of getting on with their everyday job, 9 to 5, getting the paycheck at the end of the day. But in terms of the talks that you have, do you find that, how do you do the follow-up? Or is it kind of one-off, you talk to them and then they take whatever they take out of what you've said? Or, how can you evaluate whether it has had a profound effect on them?
That's one of the most important questions. I do only tailor-made intervention. I don't have a catalog and I said, okay, Joanne, let's talk about happiness in the workplace. I think one of the risks of training in the corporate world is that there are many, many offers. And at some point, employees may be fed up with all these trainings and coach and everything. So my approach is to do only tailor-made. So usually I meet with someone from the company and they tell me what's happening in the company. So sometimes there are real difficulties, change of management, change of culture. Sometimes it's not about resolving something, but just maybe encouraging, motivating. And well, I listen, and I often say I have the feeling to be a stranger invited at the Christmas dinner. And I'm here and I listen to everything.
All the gossip.
I have all my notes.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, well, regarding what you said, I think that we can approach this concept or this concept, and maybe we can do it for 1 hour, for 3 hours. Maybe it will be one shot, or we can think of a long-term collaboration. So it will really depend of the needs, of the spirit of the company. So about your question, how to evaluate what I'm bringing to the companies, I think there are different type of KPI, let's say. The first one is, of course, when I finish my talk,
the
my
immediate
workshop,
feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is really for now really enthusiastic, and
because it must be so different to what they're used to.
That's what people tell me, and that's what I want to bring. So I'm really happy about that. A different approach. There are a lot of coaches in companies. So what I'm doing is just different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just a different approach. So the immediate reactions are always very interesting. Some people are a little bit puzzled, and some of them, they need some more time to
digest it.
I remember maybe it was one of the last talk I did. One of the person, he told me, okay, I'm going to think a lot while driving back home. And I said, oh, wow, that's for me, that's a really big compliment to say that, okay, it will stay in my mind and I'm going to think about it. But then what's really interesting is how to really implement in a practical and pragmatic way the philosophical tools and concept. And for that, a one-shot event
is not enough,
of course. But that's the aim, really. The aim is that with this philosophical approach, is to change the way we are seeing things, work, relation to others. And I told you before, when I discovered philosophy, it was really a slap in the face. The idea is that from that initial encounter, really to build a different approach, different from what I knew, from the way I was perceiving life, work, etc.
Well, it's not a controversial question, but I think that it's something that you probably have some thoughts on. Generally, from what you've seen since you came back, or even in your previous life in Dubai, do you think people are happy?
Well, in general, in Mauritius?
In general, and in Mauritius, obviously. Sorry, I always ask one of these questions that no one's expected me to ask.
I think if I have the answer to the question, I will write a book and become rich and famous. Well, I may have maybe 2 or 3 different answers to the question. The first one that popped into my mind is it's about human nature. And a lot of philosophers, the one I have in my mind is a German philosopher. His name is Arthur Schopenhauer. He's known to be maybe the most pessimistic philosopher in the whole Occidental history. And he says that human nature is all about desire, which seems obvious and logical. I want that. It could be like, I don't know, new shoes, new car, or I want to find love, I want to be a better mom, whatever. But then he says that once you reach the object of desire, you will be, he doesn't say happy, content for a while.
And then you want something else.
And then you want something else. And that's it. And human nature is eternally unsatisfied. So that's why maybe if we think of happiness like a state of like serenity, to be fully content, I think that definition of happiness, maybe that doesn't exist. But then that doesn't mean that happiness doesn't exist. Another philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, says that it's during the process to reach the object of desire that you're really happy, because you're really motivated. And he says, it doesn't matter if you reach the object or not, it's the process who really brings joy and happiness. So it really depends. Now, if I try not to be as general and to think about maybe Mauritius or some other parts of the world, I think, and that's why I want to say that philosophers need to be connected to the reality and to the world. There are maybe objective criterion which does not guarantee happiness, but which are, let's say, fundamental criterion in order maybe to reach happiness. Well, what I will say is kind of obvious. It's about health, having enough food, having shelter, and mental health, of course. So I guess we all know that these are not sufficient, but these are really the basis. I'm a little bit annoyed when people say usually, oh, if you want, you can, it's all about willpower. Well, no, I mean, if I take my example, I never faced starving, war. I mean, all my life was pretty joyful life. I have parents who gave me a lot of opportunities. So I don't think I had to battle or to face
some of the hardships that some people in the world are facing. So
it's not only about willpower, because we don't start at the same point, obviously. So I think it all starts with this pragmatic and concrete criterion. Aristotle, who is a philosopher from the ancient Greece, said that you can't do philosophy if you're starving or if you're hungry, and I think that's really true.
But do you think that we could, I'm trying to be devil's advocate here, challenge you a little bit. Do you think that, and obviously it's impossible even for myself to put myself in that situation, because like you, I've never really had to go through these extreme form of hardships that some people are now facing, as we all know. But do you think it's possible to, and I don't know whether this is philosophy or spirituality, to bring ourselves into a state of mind where we are, and we feel that everything that is happening is just as it's meant to be. I'm not saying everything, I'm not trying to be, generalist and say, everything happens for a reason and that kind of thing. But I'm just trying to say that in each moment, our life consists of a series of present moments, not the past and the future doesn't exist. In each present moment, things are as they are meant to be. And it is in those moments that we need to try to find meaning in that, however painful they might be. And I know it's easy to say conceptually because we're not actually physically going through those. But do you think that could bring some sort of comfort or solace or happiness even if you live in that moment, in each present moment? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I would say at some point, yes. And of course, it's only my opinion that I'm sharing right now, but I'm trying to think about an example. And in a very dramatic way, the first example I have in my mind is what's happening right now in Gaza or Palestine or Israel. And as a lot of people, I saw all these images of these mothers crying their lost children, right? And well, I guess I'm really moved right now, sorry. And I guess that because I'm a mother also, right? If that happened to me, I don't think I will have that possibility you said. I think it's possible for us because we are, in a way, privileged people. And I'm happy I don't have any sense of guilt about that. I mean, I have a responsibility to do the maximum. But when you're losing what is the most important for you, how do you turn this moment into something meaningful? I mean, I think there are lives where some people can say and have the feeling that nothing has any more meaning or sense. And I guess our responsibility is to, well, as far as we are concerned, I mean, I'm not governing any country, I don't have any power regarding the example I just took, but our responsibility is try to avoid that for us and for other people. And I guess these past days I thought a lot about empathy, because that's a concept we're talking a lot about, right? At school, in corporate, and in the society in general. And I'm just trying to question myself and to ask myself, why are we so different about empathy? And I guess, well, you will tell me, okay, yeah, everything is about philosophy. Yes, it is in my point of view. But I really think that philosophy helps a lot regarding empathy, because I guess one of the main lessons we can learn from the philosophical practice is to be in others' shoes. Not in a theoretical way, really to think about lives that are very far away from mine and very different from mine. And in our society where we always think about productivity and efficiency, we are losing that. So we need to be logical about ourselves. We can't say it's all about the technical part. It's all about being efficient, and in the same way, we don't understand why our kids have less empathy today. And then bringing a guy or a lady in the companies and say, okay, do your talk about empathy.
And then that's it.
Exactly.
Will magically be
so
solved,
I guess it's the scale is really important. And about being logical and be responsible in a certain way if we have that chance and that power.
I mean, we spoke earlier about, people don't think enough perhaps these days, but do you think that with the advent of AI, ChatGPT and all of that we actually run the risk that it's already bad enough as it is when you see children these days, they're constantly on their phone or what have you, that we actually run the risk of the situation becoming even more tiresome and actually thinking the machine is thinking for us? I heard Elon Musk actually say during an interview last weekend that he thinks the world will evolve in such a way that if we choose to, no one will have to do any work anymore because the machines will do all that for us. And I think he meant it in a positive way, but I found the concept quite scary in itself, because that's assuming that work, as we know it traditionally, is something bad, that there's no inherent satisfaction in the work. As you said earlier, it's the process rather than the outcome that matters the most. So what do you think? Sorry, long-winded question. What are your thoughts about AI?
Well, in a surprising way, I would say that I'm not that in opposition with Elon Musk. And what I have in my mind, and I think that's the first time, and what I had in my mind is that in the ancient Greece, the Greek didn't want to work, and their perception of work was really negative. At that time, the slaves were working, and the Greek citizens were doing philosophy, sport, poetry, music, parties a lot, and that's it. Before that, it's important to have food and everything, but it's necessary, but that's not the aim of life. The aim of life is to elevate oneself through philosophy, art, etc. So if tomorrow the slave of yesterday would become the robots of tomorrow, why not? But then my question is, what are we going to do with this free time? Because if you describe a world where people will try to reach a certain way of becoming a better person through sport or through the philosophical thinking, or to bring more imagination through art, I would say, okay, bring it. I sign now. But the thing is that the less we develop these activities, the less we will go towards these activities in a natural way. And we can see today with children who are always, well, this is an easy criticism, right? But I think it's kind of true with children who are always stuck in front of screen. And we know that in order to tell them to switch off the screen and to go out or to do something really different, it has become for some children really an effort. And I guess that it's becoming the trend for everyone now. So I'm fully agree to say, okay, maybe now the center of our life, maybe tomorrow won't be work anymore. So we need to define another purpose, another meaning. And I'm not sure that we reached that point yet.
Yeah. And that's on a global scale. It's not particular to Mauritius,
no,
I guess.
No, of course not, yeah.
Last question for you, Anouchka. What is your hope for and I'll go outside the company now, what is your hope for the individual of tomorrow as regards his or her relationship with philosophy? What would you wish that they have the curious mind to look into and consider?
Maybe I will take my example, not in a pretentious way, but just to share what philosophy brought me in my personal path. I always said, to myself first that, I tried to figure out who would I be today if I didn't encounter the philosophical practice. Well, I can't really answer that question, but I'm kind of sure that I would have a life with less meaning, more irrational path, more illogical decisions. I'm 100% sure of that. And on a regular basis, I ask myself, how do people try to reach happiness without the philosophical tools? That's really a serious question I ask myself. I'm not saying that there are solutions, and I'm not saying that I'm always reaching happiness, of course, but in moments in my life when I felt a little bit lost or sad, there are really some thinkers that did help me. I mean, they are like companions to me, really in a very like material and concrete way. And I mean, it's better to have friends in life, right? And enlightened friends.
Sure.
That's the way that's my relationship with philosophy. So if people knew what philosophy could really bring to their lives, I guess we will all be in bookshops buying all the history of philosophy. So what I would love is just that people would just understand that it's not that hard to think by yourself, to just go out of the obvious, to try to go out of the cliche and the stereotypes. What's the risk? I mean, the risk is maybe to discover yourself and to find happiness. I think that's the biggest risk.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much on these beautiful words. And I think just to add to that, I think if everyone did that, it would probably stop a lot of wars. It would probably kind of get rid of all these, as you said, these fake institutionalized dogmas and, preconceived and pre-established, which are, ultimately, maybe forms of tools of control rather than...
I'm really convinced about that.
Yeah, but that's probably a discussion for another day.
With pleasure.
So hopefully what I'm really hoping out of this talk is that it will help deconstruct or demystify in people's mind what philosophy is all about. Last question, how may people, companies reach out to you? How can they find you?
I'm very active on social media, just to say social media are not all bad or all good. It depends on your approach. So on LinkedIn and Instagram, I have a little philosophical journal.
Lovely.
On Instagram, it's in French, but otherwise on LinkedIn, I'm really active. So happy to connect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne.